In our headlines on this Friday, January 2nd, here in South Korea. President Lee Jae-myung welcomes the new year by praising South Korea's democratic resilience and by pledging to advance national prosperity and regional peace. And starting this coming Sunday, President Lee Jae-myung begins a 4-day state visit in neighboring China, where he's scheduled to sit down with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping next Monday. Meanwhile, the South Korean stock market opens its first day of trade for the year 2026 with a new high, with foreign investors raking in shares in response to record high exports for the month of December last year. President Lee Jae-myung ushered in 2026 with a reception at the Blue House, where he also shared his vision for the country in the new year. Our top office correspondent Song Yoo-jin starts us off.
A country where effort is rewarded, opportunities are open, and prosperity is shared. That's the vision President Lee Jae-myung has for South Korea in the new year.
2026년 병오년 새해는 회복과 정상화의 토대 위에서 우리 대한민국이 대도약을 향해 힘차게 달려나가는 새로운 한 해가 될 것입니다.
Marking the start of the year, President Lee hosted a New Year's reception at the Blue House on Friday. Around 200 guests attended, including key figures from the executive, legislative, and judicial branches, as well as representatives from business, labor, and religious circles. In his remarks, the president underscored his policy direction for 2026, ensuring that economic growth benefits society as a whole, not just a selective few. He stressed that shared prosperity is not only a matter of fairness, but a driver of sustainable growth.
공동체와 국민 전체의 역량으로 이뤄낸 이 경제 성장의 결실이 중소기업 또 벤처기업까지 흐르고 국민 한 분 한 분이 체감할 수 있는 삶의 변화로 이어져야 합니다.
The message echoed his New Year's address a day earlier, in which Lee pledged stronger support for startups and small businesses, creating an environment where innovation and risk-taking are encouraged and failure is not penalized. The president also called for national unity, urging the country to move beyond deepening division.
갈등을 키우기보다 공존과 화합의 길을 찾고 성장의 속도만큼이나 상생의 책임을 고민할 때 우리 대한민국이 다시 한번 큰 도약을 이뤄낼 수 있을 것으로 확신합니다.
Cabinet ministers and the leadership of the ruling Democratic Party were present at Friday's event. However, the main opposition People Power Party decided not to attend, likely due to ongoing political tensions over the establishment of a special tribunal for insurrection charges and allegations of illegal lobbying involving senior DP politicians. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News.
National Security Advisor Wee Sung-lak says the leaders of South Korea and China will sit down for their second summit next Monday in Beijing. Our correspondent Yoon Jung-min has the latest.
The South Korean leader will depart for Beijing on Sunday as part of his 4-day state visit to China. On Monday, President Lee Jae-myung will be hosted by Chinese President Xi Jinping for a summit, just 2 months after they met in South Korea's Gyeongju. High on the agenda is restoring the Seoul-Beijing relationship, which had been frosted under the previous Yoon Suk-yeol administration.
Based on deep friendship and robust trust between Korea and China, we will restore the strategic dialogue channel to solidify the political foundation.
The leaders are also expected to focus on economic cooperation, centered on supply chains and digital economy, among others, with a signing event planned for a number of MOUs. North Korea is also on the summit agenda, as Seoul asks for a constructive role by Beijing to revive dialogue with Pyongyang.
People's livelihoods and peace are inseparable. Both South Korea and China share the common goal of peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula and in Northeast Asia.
Eyes are also on China potentially lifting its unofficial ban on Korean cultural content, which was in retaliation for Seoul's decision to deploy the U.S. THAAD missile defense system in 2016. Other issues on the table include the issue of China's unauthorized steel structures in the West Sea. When asked about Taiwan issues, Wei said South Korea respects the One China policy. On Tuesday, a number of meetings with high-level Chinese politicians is scheduled, including Chairman of the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress, Zhao Leji, and Premier Li Chang. President Yi will then head to Shanghai, where he will meet Party Secretary of Shanghai, Chen Jining. Also in that city, Yi will visit the Provisional Government Building in Shanghai, a Korean government in exile during Japanese colonial rule. He plans to honor the 150th anniversary of the birth of Korean independence activist Kim Gu, as well as the centennial anniversary of the Shanghai Provisional Government. Business cooperation is also key to Yi's China trip. The president will attend a South Korea-China business forum in Beijing and a venture startup summit in Shanghai. Yi will also meet Koreans residing in China during his stay. The president's top security advisor called the New Year trip to China unprecedented, in that it completes a South Korea-China reciprocal visit at the top level in just 2 months. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, Foreign Minister Choi Han spoke with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi on the phone this past Wednesday to fine-tune details of the upcoming state visit to China by President Lee Jae-myung. Our foreign affairs correspondent Oh Soo-young reports.
South Korea and China's top diplomats held a phone call for concrete and substantive outcomes ahead of President Lee Jae-myung's state visit to Beijing. Seoul's foreign ministry says Minister Choi Han talked on the telephone on the last day of the year with his counterpart Wang Yi, focusing on the top-level trip from January 4th to January 7th. The two ministers reviewed the trajectory of South Korea-China relations over the past year and agreed to maintain close communication to ensure the success of the visit, which will mark the first state-level summit diplomacy of the new year for both countries. Both sides stressed the need to deliver substantive results that can be tangibly felt by the public and consolidate the momentum towards fully restoring Seoul and Beijing's strategic cooperative partnership. Cho and Wang also exchanged views on the situation on the Korean Peninsula and in Northeast Asia, agreeing to continue efforts aimed at regional stability and prosperity. This comes amid North Korea's continued missile tests. On Sunday, Pyongyang carried out a launch drill involving long-range strategic cruise missiles over the West Sea, with leader Kim Jong-un observing on site, 4 days after it tested new surface-to-air missiles. North Korea has described the launches as part of efforts to strengthen its nuclear capabilities, rejecting the idea of denuclearization. Against this backdrop, Seoul has repeatedly emphasized the importance of regional coordination, including with Beijing, while encouraging the resumption of dialogue between Pyongyang and Washington. During his 4-day stay, the South Korean leader will hold a summit with President Xi Jinping, where security matters are likely to be raised. On top of that, South Korea's decision to pursue nuclear-powered submarines may be discussed. The two leaders are further expected to address economic relations following years of market uncertainty, following Beijing's unofficial sanctions on South Korean businesses and culture, after Seoul decided to adopt a US missile defense system against North Korea's growing capabilities. Yi and Xi last met in Gyeongju in November when the Chinese leader visited South Korea to attend the APEC leaders meeting. The upcoming talks in Beijing will mark their second summit in just over 2 months. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
In other news, among the changes on the economic front this year is the government's management of strategic planning as well as policy and budget allocation as well as execution. Our correspondent Kim Do-yeon covers this change and more.
South Korea's economic control tower has been completely re-engineered. Effective Friday, the Ministry of Economy and Finance, which had served as the country's super ministry since 2008, has been separated into distinct bodies. This marks the first structural split in 18 years. The newly reinstated Ministry of Economy and Finance, located in the Sejong Central Building, will handle economic policy, taxation, foreign exchange, and state property management. Meanwhile, the functions of budget and national strategy have been transferred to the new Ministry of Planning and Budget, operating directly under the Prime Minister's office. The idea to work together was the reason behind the merger back in 2008, but with the split in authority, the government's now trying to have each agency focus on its goals. This is because when mid to long-term budget planning and immediate budget execution are done by the same agency, the planning could be focused more on immediate measures. While the government restructures the top, it is also widening the safety net at the bottom. The Ministry of Health and Welfare has raised the standard median income for a 4-person household to roughly 6.49 million won, or about $4,600. This represents a 6.51% increase, the sharpest hike on record, aimed at reflecting recent inflation and the rising cost of living. This standard median income, which represents the exact midpoint of all households ranked by earnings, is critical, as it serves as the eligibility benchmark for 80 different government welfare programs. With this adjustment, the threshold for livelihood benefits, which is capped at 32% of the median income, has also been raised. For a 4-person household, the monthly support cutoff has increased from 1.95 million won to nearly 2.08 million won, which is roughly $1,480. In addition, more rules will be in place for the real estate market. To prevent so-called gap investment fraud, authorities will no longer recognize multiple rental deposits as valid debt for welfare eligibility, ensuring support reaches those who truly need it. 김도현, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, Bank of Korea Governor Lee Chang-yong expects the economy to expand 1.8% this year. However, in the absence of the IT sector, that outlook drops to 1.4%. In a speech to mark the start of the new year on this Friday, he spoke of a K-shaped economy which splits recovery into 2 directions, one rising and the other falling. With regard to the South Korean currency, the governor linked the weak won partly to massive overseas investments by Koreans here at home and called for a comprehensive review of capital outflows and their economic implications. The South Korean stock market charged into the new year with record strength as foreign investors raked in shares bolstered by news of record South Korean exports in December last year. Park Jun-han reports.
After a 2-day holiday over the new year, South Korea's benchmark KOSPI broke another record on Friday. The market opened on Friday at just over 4,224 points, up 0.25% from Tuesday's close, and then proceeded to end the day's trading at over 4,309 points, up 95.46 points or 2.27%. The market opened an hour later than usual at 10 a.m. due to the annual opening ceremony attended by financial leaders to celebrate the new year. Despite the weak performance of the United States stock indices on Wednesday, the KOSPI surged. Yonhap News Agency, citing local analysts, claimed that strong annual export data released over the holiday was a key driver of the Korean stock surge. The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Resources announced on Thursday that December exports reached $69.57 billion, marking a 13.4% year-on-year increase and setting a record high for any December. This figure significantly surpassed the consensus forecast of an 8.3% rise. However, Friday's rally was led by foreign investors, while domestic retail investors sold. An economics expert said investors should take a wait-and-see approach.
It is, so to speak, an excitement effect following last year's sharp gains. If institutional or retail investors were leading the rally, we could say the momentum is still alive. But this rally has been driven by foreign investors, not individuals. That is why we need to wait and see a bit longer.
Overall, Friday's strong performance reflects optimism about South Korea's export-driven economy, with particular momentum in rising sectors tied to global demand trends such as artificial intelligence and manufacturing. The country's major tech stocks, Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix, both saw a record-breaking rise on Friday, with Samsung shares closing at over 128,000 won and SK Hynix shares closing at above 677,000 won. Park Jun-han, Arirang News.
And 2026 is also promising an exciting calendar of events on the K-pop front with the return of big names like BTS and BLACKPINK. Our Park Gun-woo has more.
K-pop fans, get ready. Phenomenal boy band BTS has officially announced a March 20th comeback, revealed on the very first day of the new year.
여러분 새해 복 많이 받으시고요. 올해 뵙겠습니다.
The release will mark BTS's first album in nearly 4 years, following the completion of military service by all 7 members. Details on the album's concept or a potential world tour are expected later this year. Expectations are already running high as their 2022 track Run BTS from their latest album topped the iTunes chart in more than 60 countries. But BTS isn't the only act making waves. BLACKPINK's dropping a first full-length album in 4 years, following last summer's single Jump. BIGBANG's also gearing up for a comeback, marking 20 years since debuting, while EXO is set to drop a new full-length album in mid-January. As these so-called second and third generation K-pop groups return, questions remain over whether they can recapture the spotlight they once held. One expert said fan power will be the key.
The fandom has become much stronger than before, so even when groups make a comeback after a long break, the role of their fans is clearly important. What matters most is whether artists show what their fans want to see as K-pop. More than other genres, is fan-centered. So, it's better not to be overly innovative or focus on agency profits.
He added that collaborations could help veteran groups reach a second peak, citing TWICE participating in the KPop Demon Hunters project as a successful example. He also noted that working with younger generation artists could help sustain and expand their musical careers. While some analysis show a global decline in K-pop album sales compared to 2024, the same expert says it's not a major concern.
Album sales aren't the only metric to look at. The decline was partly due to major groups postponing their comebacks. Globally, overall consumption is shrinking. It's not just happening in Korea. At the same time, concert sales have reached record highs, and I believe this positive trend will continue into next year.
Although groups like BTS and BLACKPINK still lead the global K-pop scene, he said it's time for that leadership to be passed on, with more active participation from rookies and artists from small to mid-sized agencies. 박건우, Arirang News.
And sales of traditional Korean goods hit a record high in 2025, driven by the global popularity of K-pop Demon Hunters. According to the Korea Heritage Agency on this Friday, the combined sales of its K-heritage souvenirs, both online and offline, amounted to around 16.1 billion won, or over $11.1 million, up 35.5% on year. The agency, which makes products featuring heritage-inspired design, says the Netflix animation was a powerful catalyst that drove up demand. North Korea's Kim Jong-un marked the new year with a visit to his family mausoleum accompanied by his wife and daughter, whose presence there has sparked fresh speculation about a potential past succession. Our Kim Bo-kyung reports.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and his family visited the Kumsusan Palace of the Sun on the first day of 2026. This, according to the state-run Korean Central News Agency on Friday. What's notable was that Kim's daughter Kim Joo-hae appeared publicly for the first time at a visit to the family mausoleum. The media did not directly mention Joo-hae's attendance, but the photos released showed Kim Jong-un, his wife Lee Seol-ju, and their daughter Joo-hae standing together in the very front row, with Joo-hae positioned at the center. They were accompanied by key party and government officials, and the KCNA reported that all visitors made a firm pledge to fulfill their responsibilities and duties at the forefront of the sacred cause of realizing the eternal prosperity and development of the regime and its people's well-being. The Kumsusan Palace of the Sun, where the bodies of past leaders, Kim Jong-un's late father Kim Jong-il and grandfather Kim Il-sung, are enshrined, is a symbol in North Korea of the legitimacy of the regime. Since coming to power in 2012, Kim Jong-un has visited the palace on New Year's Day almost every year. But he skipped a visit in 2018, as well as in 2024 and 2025, making the visit alongside his daughter all the more surprising. One expert says this clearly is a political signal related to leadership succession.
Appearing at the Kumsusan Palace of the Sun and standing even more centrally than her father clearly signals her status as a potential successor. It goes beyond a symbolic family role and represents a political message, publicly showing that she is being presented as the next leader who carries on the legacy of past rulers.
As Chue is still so young, it is unlikely she will be given an official title at the 9th Party Congress, expected to take place in January. But the expert says her appearance there could itself be seen as a strong signal that she is being presented as a successor in preparation. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Also in the news, dozens of people lost their lives and over 100 were injured in a fire during the wee hours of New Year's Day at a bar in a Swiss alpine resort. Our Lee Seung-jae covers this tragic event.
At least 40 people have been killed and more than 100 others injured after a devastating fire swept through a crowded New Year's Eve bar in the Swiss alpine resort town of Crans, Montana. The blaze broke out around 1:30 a.m. Thursday at a popular bar known as La Constellation, as large crowds gathered to celebrate the start of the new year. Police say the venue was packed at the time. Investigators are still working to determine the cause of the fire. Swiss President Guy Parmelin described the incident as one of the worst tragedies the country has faced.
The circumstances that bring us together on this first day of the year in the capital of Valais are dramatic. The fire that occurred last night in a bar in Crans, Montana is one of the worst tragedies our country has ever known.
Crans, Montana is a major international ski destination, particularly busy during the holiday season, with 4 nationals among the dead and injured. A tourist from New York told AFP that he filmed bright orange flames pouring from the bar and saw people running and screaming in the darkness. Another eyewitness told Reuters that bystanders rushed to help, carrying injured people away from the fire to nearby bars and restaurants that remained open as temporary shelters, as many of the surviving victims faced cold-related shock after fleeing from intense heat into freezing air.
As mentioned before, the main, problem was the temperature shock from the heat inside to the cold outside. So one of the priorities was to get everyone warm. I'm talking the curtains of the restaurant was used.
Out of respect for the victims and their families, President Parmelin postponed his traditional New Year's address to the nation, which had been scheduled for Thursday afternoon. Authorities have also established a reception center and a dedicated helpline to support affected families. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
It's freezing today on the very first workday of the new year, and the cold is really sticking around. There's a cold wave warning around the northern parts of Gyeonggi-do, Gangwon-do, and the northern parts of Gyeongsang-buk-do provinces, and a cold wave advisory for the Seoul metropolitan area, the Chungcheong-do provinces, parts of Gyeongsang-buk-do, and eastern parts of Jeollabuk-do provinces. This fierce cold will last until tomorrow morning. Seoul will wake up to -8 degrees on Saturday morning. However, starting from the afternoon, temperatures will finally bounce back to the average for this time of year. Most areas will have a freezing morning tomorrow, with Chuncheon at -14 degrees and Gyeongju at -7 degrees. Highs will rise to 6 degrees in Gwangju and Daegu, 7 degrees in Busan. Temperatures around the normal levels will continue for the time being. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session, so do stay with us.